Hi, I'm Abby, and this is my channel. Welcome to Shakespeare Week, and today is the day. It is April 23rd, which is the official death day, but the unofficial birthday of Shakespeare. So today we are going over my complete Shakespeare collection. I have a lot of Shakespeare. You know, he wrote a lot of plays and poems, and I have almost all of them, not all of them, but we'll see when I go through them all. I do have a pretty decent sized Shakespeare collection. As you can see, it takes up a whole shelf that I cleaned off here for this video. And I also picked up around my home a couple other ones. But today we'll be going over all of them, and I think I'm gonna start with my collections books, so not individual copies of plays, but books I have that have like either it's like my complete works or mini plays within a book or quotes or something, but not a single play within itself. Also, I'm repping my man Ham. Got this shirt from the local Shakespeare company when they were putting on Hamlet. I bought it. There's a nice skull on it. Very fitting for Hamlet, I think. I think most of the plays I own individual copies and just like one of them, but there are a few. I think the most I have of one play is 4 copies. And you'll see when I go through them which ones they are. So without further delay, let's get into it. All the Shakespeare. So the first book I'm going to show is my complete works book. I only have one so far, but I've been thinking about getting another edition, you know, from different publishers. Sometimes they change things up, different notes and stuff. But the one I have is a Cambridge text complete works. It's nice and big and has this nice pretty green cover, and it has gold on the sides. Most of my Shakespeare's that I own are used copies, and this one included. I go to a local used bookstore and they have so many used Shakespeare copies of every play and complete works. That's where I got this, and that's where I get most of my books. I do have a few that are brand new that I bought new, but this is one of the used ones, and it's really great. It has, you know, a lot of text on a page. It's big. It can't sit on a shelf upright. I have to lay it on its side, or actually I usually have this by my bed. I keep it in my bedroom. But I think I want to get another complete edition, but this is my main one, my first one that I got. And I think this one was printed in the 80s, from what the copyright says, and it is from Cambridge University Press, and I really like the color and the look of it. It's very nice and clean and simple. And that is my complete work. So I have every play and poem by Shakespeare in here, but usually I go to the individuals, but it's nice to have a complete works. The next book I'm going to show is a illustrated kind of short story edition of Shakespeare works. They have 12 different ones that they picked, and they kind of summarize them down. I think it's marketed as a children's summary book, but it's illustrated beautifully. And it's illustrated by Alice Lindstrom, and the title of it is A Stage Full of Shakespeare Stories, 12 Tales from the Bard Retold for Children. So yeah, this is my copy of this. It has beautiful illustrations of the plays that they chose to pick. They picked 12 of them, and it doesn't have the exact play, but it has a summarized. It has a list of characters of every beginning of the play, and it is a beautiful book. Maybe one day I'll read this to my kids to introduce them to Shakespeare. But I think I got this as a gift for Christmas or a birthday. Can't remember. But I think it's beautiful, and again, this won't stand up on a shelf. I have to lay it down because it's so tall. But I also like to display this one because it is very pretty and has the illustrations from all the plays they chose on the front, and that is one of my illustrated editions. The next book I have is doesn't actually tell the stories of the plays, but it is a whole book about the plays and Shakespeare's work, and it's called The Shakespeare Book, Big Ideas Simply Explained, and this is what it looks like. This is more if you're studying about Shakespeare. It tells about all the themes and characters and timelines. It has a nice, goes through every page, has a nice cover here, and then goes through, tells basic things of what happens during the play and themes, and sometimes it talks about different productions of the play. It's more like an information about Shakespeare and his plays. It also talks about him during his life, what he did, when they know what he did, like when it changed from the chamberlain's men to the king's men. And this book shows the plays in kind of order that we think he wrote them, or the timeline that he wrote them, which is kind of cool. You can see which works he did first and which ones he did last, and kind of see the difference between them and how he grew as a writer and changed things around. But yeah, I really enjoy this book. When I'm reading or kind of researching a play, I'll turn to this and I'll turn to this and read what they have to say about it, the themes, look when he wrote it, and it's a great like resource if you want to research Shakespeare. The next book I got for Christmas, and I read it pretty often because it's a Shakespeare for every day of the year, and it's edited by Ali Asiri, I think is how you say her name. But it's a beautiful copy, and this is the type of book that has little quotes from every play and a lot of great information telling about those quotes, but they pick a quote for every day of the year, as the title suggests, and you can turn to it, and this is like July 12th and July 13th, and they have different plays they pick from, and it has every single day of the year. And I've been sort of keeping up with this and reading the day on the day. I got a little behind in March, but now I'm caught up in April. And it comes with a little bookmark so you can keep your place. But it's really great. I read it usually in the morning or night, depending on when I make time. But it's a little like page day, and you get a little expert of Shakespeare. And I really like the information it gives along, why it chose that quote for the day. Sometimes it will show information of like this play was known to be performed this day to the king or queen, or so it's really cool. It has a lot of great information like that, like on this day Shakespeare's kid was born is one of the excerpts I read. So a lot of great information just about Shakespeare and little quotes from every play and how they relate to every day. It's really great. The next book is one of my favorites and one of the smaller books, and I got it when I was in the British Museum. It's very kind of a cutesy little book. It's called Shakespeare, The Bard's Guide to Abuses and Affronts, and it's nice and tiny, and it's so cute. It has quotes just from all his plays that kind of make fun of people. It's broken up into different categories of like love and intelligence. A lot of them come from the comedies because they like to make fun of people. But this is a great little book that I picked up. Bard is really good at insults, so it just cracks me up reading some of these again. But yeah, this is a cute little thing I picked up while in the British Museum. And the last book I'm going to show of like my collections books is actually an older book. I think it's from 1907. My mom picked it up for me while she was in an antique store, and it's called Tales from Shakespeare, and it's nice and old, you can see, and kind of beat up, but you can see in the front it's written on, and I think it says 1907, so it's at least from 1907, so it's over 110 years old. and it just tells summaries of the plays. It doesn't actually show the plays, but it's kind of, each play is written out kind of like as a novel instead of the play. It's really cool. Little antique book that I got as a gift, and I really love it. And it's one of my, and you can see there's like stains and it's falling apart because it's so old, but I really enjoy having this in my collection. I kind of want to look for more antique books of Shakespeare, but I really enjoy getting this one as a gift. I try to not mess with it as much because it is falling apart, but so I mostly leave it on my shelves, but every once in a while I'll pick it up and look at details of it. So now I'm going to start getting into the individual copies of the plays that I have. I will go alphabetically, so we're going to start with the A's, obviously, and go through and show which editions I have of each. If I have the play, I think I'm missing like 2 plays in individual form. I don't know exactly what they are off the top of my head, but I'm going to show you the ones that I do have, obviously. So going alphabetically, the first play is All's Well That Ends Well, and I only have 1 copy of this, but it is a Folgers edition. It's one of the older editions. I think this is from either the early 2000s or late 90s, but they do have newer editions of Folgers. Again, as I said earlier, most of my books are used books from a used bookstore, so I have older copies and newer copies, but this one is a Folgers library. The next play is Antony and Cleopatra, and I have 2 copies of this one. One is the Folgers library, a newer edition. You can see this is like a newer look to the Folgers library books, and the newer ones you can tell have this like painting type cover with the name on it in script. And the second edition I have is an Arden copy. Arden series are very known for researching Shakespeare or like studying Shakespeare. They have in the beginning a lot of information and text about the books or the plays and essays that people have written studying Shakespeare. A lot of information goes into this and the notes. The next play is As You Like It, and I only have 1 copy of As You Like It. Is a Folgers, which is kind of, I thought I had more of these because As You Like It is one of my favorite plays. Usually I try to gain more of the ones that I like a lot, but obviously I haven't. So the next play is The Comedy of Errors, and I only have 1 edition of this, but it's a little different from the ones before because this is an Oxford World's Classics edition. You can see it's a little different, and I really like the little drawing they have here on the front of some of the twins. I forget their names right now. The next play is Coriolanus, and I have only 1 copy of this one, and it actually is one of the ones I bought new, which is kind of rare for me. But I have a Pelican edition with this beautiful little illustration on it. I did get this from, I think, Barnes & Noble, but I think it's really cute, the little illustrations. It's more of a pretty copy. And the next play I have is Cymbeline, or Cymbeline, I don't, however you want to pronounce it. But it's one of my different looking copies because it's a hard copy, and it has a nice pretty cover that's simple, and I bought this used, but it's also from Pelican. It's just an older copy. I do own 1 other play that looks like this, but I haven't been able to find any other ones, but I do really like just how simple it is and nice and clean. Next, we are moving on to the H's, which is one of the larger groups that the plays start with because of all the Harrys or Henrys. But the first H play is Hamlet, and I have 2 editions. One is the Folgers newer copy, and another one is the Barnes & Noble. This edition I got when I was doing a book club and we read Hamlet. And then this edition is actually one of my oldest of my collection because any copy that I have that has this style from Barnes & Noble, I probably bought either late 2000s or early 2010s. This is the one I used when I studied it in school. Most of the ones I bought like this were for school. It even has a bookmark in it, but I think that's from a more recent read. But yeah, these are my 2 editions of Hamlet. And again, I'm surprised I didn't have more because it is one of my favorites, but I do have a shirt of it, so. And the next play is Henry IV. There are 2 parts to Henry IV, part 1 and part 2. I have 2 copies of part 1 and 1 copy of part 2, but the part 2 and one of the part 1s are kind of like matching sets. And this is the set. This is part 1 and this is part 2. They have the same cover but different colors. And these editions are from the Royal Shakespeare Company, the RSC. But the other edition I have is of part 1, and I found this in an antique store, and I think it's one of the cutest things. But it's a tiny little edition here of Henry, and it's a mini pocketbook Shakespeare book. I want to say it's from the early 1900s. It doesn't have a date in it, but it has the whole play with no notes in it, and it's bound by leather, and it has King Henry IV Part 1 stamped on the side. The next in order, obviously, is Henry V, and I only have 1 edition of Henry V, and that is a Signet Classic right here. But Henry V is one of my favorite histories that he wrote, and it has a nice illustration on the front of it. And the next is Henry VI, obviously in order. We went 4, 5, and now we're going to 6. And Henry VI actually has 3 parts to it, but I have 1 edition that has all 3 parts in it. It's probably one of the thickest books I have of Shakespeare, but it also is a Signet Classic that I showed with Henry V. As you can see, it says that it has all 3 parts in it, but it matches with my Henry V copy. It has 3 little illustrations. And the last of the Henrys and the H's is Henry VIII. And I have 2 copies of this, and one of them is the pelican with the illustrated pictures on the front, like I had of Coriolanus, and I think this is one of the ones I bought new. But the second edition I have is another one of those tiny little books, bound in leather. This one's a little red leather edition. Again, it still doesn't say what year these were printed. I don't think any of them, but this one does have a little note in it. Carefully edited and compared with the best text, which I think is funny. Usually they don't say that, but that is my second of my tiny little antique leather-bound Shakespeare books. The next alphabetically is the J, which is Julius Caesar, and as you can see, I have the Barnes & Noble. I did study this in school, so that's why I have this edition, bought new, but back 10 years ago probably. When I was in school and studied this play. I remember studying this and loving it. And I think I have celebrated the Ides of March ever since. And the next play is King John, and I only have 1 edition of this, and it is an older Folgers edition. And the next play is King Lear, and I have 2 editions of King Lear. One is a 3rd series, Arden, and the 2nd edition of King Lear that I have is a New Cambridge Shakespeare edition. Has this nice artistic drawing of Shakespeare on it. The next play is Love, Labour's Lost, and I only have 1 edition, and it is an older Folgers edition. So next are the plays that start with M, which I think is the largest category. And the first play is Macbeth, which is one of the most known, but it also has, I have the most editions of Macbeth, and I have 4 different ones. I have the Arden edition of Macbeth. It is a Yale Press one. I think it's the only one I have of Yale Press, but it is very pretty. It's probably the first copy I picked up of Macbeth. Another copy that I have of Macbeth is one of the tiny antique pocket Shakespeare books. This one I think is probably in the best shape of the 4 that I have. But it has a nice little brown leather cover. and this one actually has red page sides. And the last edition I have of Macbeth is one of my favorites out of all editions of Shakespeare that I have, because it's an illustrated one and it's nice and big considering the play size of Macbeth. But it has little etches throughout the play here. They're really pretty to show pictures, but I think this is just a beautiful edition that I found at the used bookstore. So the next play is Measure for Measure, and I only have one copy, and is a new Folgers edition. This one kind of cracks me up because I did buy it used, and there is a little ring mark of someone who put their drink on it and it's just permanently there now. The next play is The Merchant of Venice, and I have two editions of it, and one is the Folgers new edition. Usually they are smaller than this, so it's one of the larger ones. And the second copy I have is an Arden series of The Merchant of Venice. The next play is The Merry Wives of Windsor, and I have one copy, and it's the Folgers edition. I think this one stands out just because it is purple. They're usually like darker colors, and this one's kind of like light and kind of noticeable. And the next play is A Midsummer's Night Dream, and I have two copies of this. One of them is one of my favorites that I own, but the first one is a Folgers library. Again, I probably own the most editions of any of the play in Folgers, so I have a lot of them. But the second edition of Midsummer I have is an illustrated edition. It's one of the larger ones, but it's beautiful and it looks like this. Has fantastic illustrations, not on the cover only, but throughout the book, but throughout the play you can see there are ones. But it is illustrated by W. Heath Robinson. It is beautiful. I really like the blue cover with the gold and the illustrations that he did, and even in the front cover it has the fairies. And the last of the Inns is Much Ado About Nothing. I have one edition of this. It's an Oxford School edition. This one also has a lot of illustrations that take up a full page, which is unique. So the next play I have is Othello, and I have three different editions of Othello. The first is the Arden series, the third edition. The second edition I have, I don't actually know who the publisher is, but it is a nice edition. It has a hardcover and a picture, I guess, from a production. And my last edition is the other copy that I have of this type of Pelican series, like I did with Cymbeline, and it has a bookmark like Cymbeline does. But I really like the look of these. I wish I could find more of these because I found them at a used bookstore. So the next play is Pericles. I only have one edition, which is the Folgers edition. The next place we get back into the histories, and the first one is Richard II. And this is a different edition from the RSC, the Royal Shakespeare Company. And the next play is Richard III. The edition I have is a Folgers Library edition. So the next play alphabetically is probably one of the most known of Shakespeare's play, and that is Romeo and Juliet, and I have three different copies of it. And the first one, of course, is the Arden Shakespeare, which has tons of information in the beginning because it is such a known play of his. The second edition I have of Romeo and Juliet is just a small scholastic copy. Compared to the Arden, this is tiny. And my last edition is a Cambridge School Shakespeare edition, and it's nice and big, and it has tons of information about productions of Romeo and Juliet. The next in alphabetical is actually not a play, but is his sonnets, and I have one copy of his sonnets, and it is a used copy. And one of the reasons I love used copies is the notes you find on it, and this one does have a note, and it says Xmas 1997 to our poet, love mom and dad, which I think is so cute. You can see here in the corner where it says it. but it has all 154 sonnets in here. So the next play is Taming the Shrew, and I have 2 copies of it. One is the Arden series, and the other one is an older Folger's copy. The next play is the Tempest, which I actually have a friend who's named after the only girl in this story, only human girl in this story. But the edition I have is the Cambridge School editions again. The next play is Timon of Athens, which is one of the lesser known ones. I have an older Shakespeare Folger's edition. This one kind of cracks me up with the picture on the front. The next play is Titus Andronicus, and I only have 1 copy of this. It is a Pelican, but it's not like any of the other Pelicans. It's an older edition that they put out, but it has some illustrations. The next play is Troilus and Cressida, and I have a Signet Classic edition, kind of like my Henry V and Henry VI ones. Has a nice illustration on the front. And the next play is Twelfth Night, and I have 3 editions of Twelfth Night. One is the Arden series, which I like that they put the donkey on the front for it. My second edition is the last of those 4 little mini antique books that I found. And my last edition is the Barnes & Noble edition from whenever I studied it. Actually, I didn't study this one in school. The other 2 that I have in this style, I studied in school, but this one I did buy during that time period of the early 2010s. But this one I bought just on my own. If you know the movie She's the Man with Amanda Bynes, it's based off of Twelfth Night, and I used to be able to quote that movie. Me and my sister still quote it sometimes, but it's based off of Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. Same character names and stuff. The next play is The Two Gentlemen of Verona, and I have 2 copies, fittingly. One of them is the Arden edition. It is actually my only Arden edition that I bought new. The rest of them I found in used bookstores. And my second edition is the Pelican Illustrated editions. It has the 2 guys on the front. And then last but not least is the last play that I have a single copy of, and I only have 1 copy of this, and is The Winter's Tale. And this, like the Henry IV copies, is from RSC, and it has a nice picture. So that is a lot. That is my whole collection of Shakespeare that I own so far. It will probably grow within the years as I get more editions and unique ones as I find them. If you made it to the end of this video, congratulations. It was probably a very long one. I can tell from filming it. It's gonna be long. This video has been through a lot. When I started filming, it was nice and sunny out, and then it slowly got darker and darker. And then I took a break for 20 minutes while it poured down rain, and now it's almost sunny again. So welcome to the springtime. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Give it a good like if you like Shakespeare. If you made it this far in the video, I'm pretty sure you do like Shakespeare. But leave a comment down below if you have a Shakespeare collection, and you can list some of your favorite plays. Maybe talk about some of your favorite ones that you have collected if you do. But again, happy Shakespeare Day. You know, death and birthday of Shakespeare. He's, you know, one of the greatest writers, one of those known writers throughout the whole world. And I just love his work, and I will always be a fan, have been a fan for many years. So thanks for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, if you want to be someone, why not be you? Bye guys. It was such a long video. I'm so tired of speaking.